All right, well, welcome everyone to the next workshop here in the test camp. This is TEAS reading, the second of the 4 workshops in this series. Let's discuss how learning and practicing test skills will empower your test confidence. Now, those of you who couldn't be in person here today, you join us live online. You're welcome to contribute your comments, and we'll continue to include them up there during the discussion periods. And if you're joining us today directly through On Demand, our Test Camp YouTube channel, of course you can pause or restart or replay that video anytime. Now during this workshop, we're going to discuss the reading section of the test. And many of you said you've already scheduled this test. Is that right? How many have already scheduled it? You've already scheduled it. Okay, so about half. All right. We suggest that you train in this order that you see up here also. And that's because the competencies and skills in the English language training are helpful when you train for reading. All right? That's why we did English first, and now we're doing this. Exactly. All right, but you can train in any order you want. There are 4 separate tests. All right, so you likely know around here the motto is prepare, practice, perform. Everyone who has successfully completed the training has passed their test, and that's because test taking is crucial. It's a skill, and a skill that requires practice. And this is the only place you can come to learn and practice these test skills. So let's go ahead and get started. First, to prepare, that means to understand yourself. It's an honest assessment of how well you know the test content and you know yourself, your testing skills. So we start by learning the blueprint. If you know the blueprint, that's a first indicator of how well you're going to perform on the test. It's also a good first step to creating what we call my study plan. And that's simply a schedule that includes reviewing and studying test content. Can you imagine everybody's plan is going to be a little different depending on what they think they know. All right, so let's learn about that blueprint. Here's an overview of the 4 individual tests in the suggested training order. On test day, however, you can expect to take 2 tests, a break, and then 2 more tests, but probably in a different order. All right. Your reading test has 39 multiple choice questions, and the time allotted, 55 minutes. You see right up here. So an average of about 1.5 minutes allotted for each question. Now knowing this helps put you on a pace for success because you decide when to answer a question and when to mark and save that question for the next pass through the test. That's one of the testing skills we practice here at the test camp. All right, our first step now though is to identify what types of reading questions can you expect to encounter on your test. Not how the questions are formatted. We know that all 39 are multiple choice. What we're talking about here is identifying the reading competencies on which questions are built. And on this test, there are 4 competencies. So let's look at each one individually here today. The first competency is ideas. Questions based on this competency test your knowledge to identify inferences, conclusions, and assumptions that you find in a passage. So do you get that? You're going to have a passage, and then you have questions that are going to ask about the main ideas of the passage. And here's a sample question. This is a typical passage. We're not going to read it now. This happens to be the Gettysburg Address. But down there at the bottom is a typical ideas question. Right? Pretty straightforward. And it's easy to recognize that they're asking you a question related to ideas. And here's a second sample. Same passage. Right? Notice in this case the question is related only to a certain statement in the passage. All right, so that's how it works. All right, those were examples of questions that might be asked about key ideas or details. The next competency is purpose. To determine the author's purpose, sometimes called the focus, you can just ask yourself why. Why was the passage written? And here at the test camp, we help you identify the 4 main reasons. All right, can you think about what they might be? Well, here's the first one on our list. Opinion. This is one of the 4 main purposes for writing. And what are some other words for opinion? Let me ask you guys, okay? Start right over here. So belief, your opinion is your belief. How about you over here? Your viewpoint or your point of view. There you go. All right, so when you write an essay, you might be given a prompt that asks you to express your opinion, right? So now we know what that is. So let's take some time to discuss at the tables what opinion is, and what are the other 4 main reasons, all right, that you might encounter on this. We've given you the first one. What are the other 3? Share your thoughts with each other. See if you can match our list of purposes. We'll come back as a group and compare your ideas. Hey, for those of you joining us today live online, share your thoughts and we'll include them in the discussions. And if you're joining us on demand by the Test Camp YouTube channel, this might be a good time to pause the recording and list some of your thoughts about how you categorize purposes. Think about why this might be important when preparing for a reading test and for writing an essay. We'll be here when you restart the video. Alright, so welcome back. Let's take a look at let's take a look at the 4 main purposes in this sample question. And there they all are. You see them all represented here? Right, notice that there are 2 main categories, argumentative and informative. The first argumentative purpose is opinion. Yeah, we just talked about that. When you want to express, like you said, a certain viewpoint. Okay, the second is persuasion. Did your group have that? How many groups had that? Everybody, okay. How's this different from opinion then? Right over here, I'm going to repeat your answer for those listening to the recording. Right, very good. Wow, how about that? Persuasion is a call to action, more than just providing a point of view. Here's a sample question from that same passage, the Gettysburg Address. Is this an argumentative question? All right, so you think it is. Is it opinion or is it persuasion? Right, at this point they're given, I guess, right, the president is giving his opinion. There you go. Right. There are 2 informative reasons to communicate. The first is simply to provide information, right, to give the facts. The second way to be informative is to give an explanation when you want to give directions or instructions. And so here's another sample question. See if you can see what's different about this one though. Yeah, anybody see it? Right, instead of asking purpose, they might use the term focus. All right. So again, why was the passage written? And we discussed purpose in more detail in the other workshop. Yeah. All right, so let's move on to the third competency, which is structure. You might remember from the workshop that these are the main concepts associated with structure. Modifiers, parallelism, and syntax. Do you remember these? They're all related to how authors structure or organize their passages, right? Or here are some terms related to structure. How they create organization. They're either literal, they're figurative, or in some cases technical. Now let's take time to discuss the meaning of these terms. What does it mean to be literal, figurative, technical? Share your thoughts with each other. How would you explain these terms maybe to a younger student, a younger brother or sister? Can you come up with some examples? We'll come back as a group and compare your ideas. Hey, those of you joining us today live online, share your thoughts. We'll include them in the discussion. And if you're joining us on demand by the Test Camp YouTube channel, this might be a good time to pause the recording and check your understanding of these writing tools. All right, think about why this might be important when you're preparing for this test. We'll be here when you restart the video. Good discussions at the tables. Let me get this session. All right, so we are more clear about these tools now, right? Let's go ahead and talk about this for the folks that are listening in on the video. You said literal was the author means what they say. Okay, so the author means exactly what's written. That's literal. Figurative, the author asks the reader to understand or to make a connection. Did I get that right? Okay, and then technical, the author is providing information or an explanation. They're being technical. Okay, so let's look at some sample questions. This is a typical structure question you would find on your test. All right, why did they put these phrases together and why in this order? Let's go and invest some time now on this. Up here, read the statements here. Now let's eliminate some of the answers starting down there at the bottom. We can eliminate contradicts. Sentence 2 does not contradict sentence 1. What else can we eliminate here? We already have one. See if you match us. Yes, we also eliminate restates. So that leaves you with either clarifies or expands. All right, which one do you like best there? All right, so that's one question answered right there, which also provides a preview for the next pass through the test. All right, so the fourth competency then is vocabulary, which you likely recognize from the other workshop. And these are the skills used to build test questions for this competency. Meanings of words, selection of words, and then diction and tone. And here's an example. Of course, you're going to be given the whole passage. Yes. Okay, question back there, I'll repeat it. Yeah, so a passage is going to be generally, what do you think? What have you heard? 3 to 4 sections. So if it's an essay, 3 paragraphs, maybe-ish. If it's a poem, 3 stanzas, 2 to 3 stanzas. All right, good question. So again, you can see why answering vocabulary questions on the first pass through, can be a valuable time management strategy we're going to talk about in just a moment. You can also be expected to ask questions about vocabulary tools, like this question about an idiom. All right, that's an overview of the 4 competencies that are used to construct test questions. Let's discuss the test strategy suggested by those who have gone before you. You can expect each passage to have several questions, right? So each passage has maybe 3 or 4 sections in it, but also you're going to have 3 or 4 questions per passage. Right, you get that? Yeah, sometimes more than 3. Yeah, you never know. I don't know. Every test is a little bit different from what we understand. All right, what does the strategy passage or questions mean? What do you think we're talking about here? Nobody. Okay, what do you think over here? Where do you start? There you go. So this is a time test, one of the few that really demands good time management. So do you read the passage and then try to answer the questions, or you read the questions and then try to find the answer up there in the passage, right? So what was your strategy before you came here to the workshop today? How many here, show of hands, let's get some honest people, how many begin by reading the passage and then answering the questions, okay? And how many start with the questions and then you go up to the passage and try to find the answer? All right, thank you. All right, so your current personal strategy, that's yours, all right? But remember, you'll see this sign that's going to appear along many of the pathways while you're over there at the training center. Usually they're giving a message of encouragement or directions. In this case, they're giving you a suggestion. So they're saying the greatest challenge is time management. Read the questions, or at least skim through the questions before reading the passage. And here's what they're saying. Here's why. There's 4 types of questions, right? We just looked through a few samples of each one. Some questions are simply less challenging. They require less time. So the suggestion is invest your time on the less challenging questions the first pass through the test. The 2 types of questions that are least challenging are vocabulary and, what would you think? Structure, right? So investing time on these questions on the first pass through the test provides a preview to each passage, and it puts you on a pace for success. All right, this skill is called decide when you get over to the training site. All right, so that's a brief overview of the competencies, or the types of questions you can expect on your test. Right? I think we said it was 39 questions, right, that you can expect to see. All right. And what then you think is the percent to pass? All right. Well, the percentage recommended here at the test camp is 80%. All right. And that's also required on quizzes and tests during your training. It can be different in different places for when you take the TEAS test. It depends on where you're taking it from. All right. So we say 30 questions, 80% to pass. You're going to be in really good shape. Yeah, 39 questions, right? So you're going to need about 30. What's it say there? 31. So that means you can miss quite a few. All right, but again, be sure to check the required score in your area. All right, let's look at those competencies in a different way. Which would you choose? And what am I getting at here is, if you could have the test built on just one of these competencies, which would you choose? Would you like to have an entire test where you have to recognize key ideas? Yeah, time is not an issue. You get all the time you wanted. Right. Or would you have a test based on just, this is just an example, or the purposes? Is that the kind of questions you like? Or do you like those structure questions where you go up and you see the ones that are highlighted? Or do you like vocabulary questions? There's no right or wrong about this. Just talk about it. See if you had a preference. If you could answer all the same types of questions, which would they be? And we'll come back as a group and compare your ideas. All right, finally, for you folks joining us today live online, thanks again for sharing your thoughts. We've been including them in the discussions, as you've heard. And if you're joining us by the Test Camp YouTube channel, this might be a good time to pause the recording and list some thoughts about which of these areas that you prefer. And does that have any implications for how you might study for the test? All right, we'll be back in a few moments when you restart the video. Well, you had very different preferred topics, but everyone agrees that the more time is invested on those key ideas and the purpose questions, right, than on the structure or the vocabulary, right? So to prepare for the test, you join this workshop and you've gained knowledge about what to expect. But another way to prepare is to select the tools you might need, the best and most reliable resources for guaranteeing your success. So expect to see this sign again along the pathways during your test skills training. There's encouraging messages from those who've gone before you, and in this case the message is avoid spending your time and your money on expensive resources that you just don't need. And commercial webinars, these are a good example. Avoid paying for free test information and avoid paying for free strategies, right? Another example is expensive tutors or tutoring companies that you just don't need for this, maybe for more challenging tests. And of course, overpriced study guides are out there sold for profit. Has anybody bought or seen the study guides that are out there? Yeah, do you mind telling us about that? I'll repeat it for the people listening in. Okay, so you're saying in a bookstore you saw these and they were $40, $45 for one guide. Yeah, well, good. I'm glad you didn't buy it because many are free or they're inexpensive. I'll show you in just a moment. A more effective and inexpensive resource, of course, would just be textbooks, because at this point you know exactly what's being tested. You know the competencies, so you could use a textbook to review and study the test content. And now over at the training site in the My Resources area, you'll be able to find the most popular and up-to-date tools for your success. We update this all the time. And there are some free tools right there. None of these cost any money for you. They're all pathways to free sources. Okay? So the suggestion, again, from those who have gone before you is not to invest time and money on resources, but go ahead and invest in yourself. Practice your test skills. Expect to gain confidence and personal independence. Your pass provides admission to these training areas, like up there at the top. That's called My Test, and this is an activity that enables you to understand or check your understanding of the test blueprint, everything we talked about here today. And you can even take a pre-test here before you start training. Now this is the Test Camp problem solving system, all comes with your pass. The first step to finding the correct answer is to identify the type of question. See up there at the top, we've been doing that here today, right? There are quizzes and tests that provide an opportunity to practice your test skills while assessing your test content knowledge, always randomized, and these quizzes are based on the competencies. So yes, those questions and answers, they change randomly on each one of those attempts. Over in the test area, there's a practice test that you can take, and then there's that post-test. And you can complete all the training activities. You can even earn a certificate, a professional test certificate that guarantees your success. All right, then expect to perform with confidence. The confidence that comes from knowledge and skills that you earn during the training. Alrighty, well, let's go get started. There's no better time than now to empower your test confidence.